She said, well, he'll be himself. And I think the takeaway is David has mutant powers and these
he's like
emotional
both
problems.
Of them.
Yeah.
Two great tastes that taste great together.
Hey, Internet. It's Paul. It's Matt, the Dork Lords. We are here talking about Legion, Season 3, Episode 3, entitled Chapter 22.
Yes.
All right. This episode gave us what Paul has been requesting for all 3 seasons, a connection to the wider X-Men universe. Paul, are you happy with now that they've given you a Professor X tie-in?
Meh.
All right. Fair enough.
I mean, they had Cerebro on his head. They actually decided to basically suggest that, I guess, that he invented it right there in the time we're watching, because it's very primitive when we see it.
Right. It's not the big globe. It's just like a helmet with wires.
Right. And actually, the helmet looked very similar to what they used in Deadpool 2.
Good.
Anyway, so that's good, I guess. I mean, in the movie version, he's has hair for a lot longer than in the comics, I believe. I'll look that up just to be pretty sure. But I feel like the young Charles Xavier story, he was fairly bald and
you feel like Harry
outcast.
Lloyd should have done the shavy shave.
Yeah.
Commit to the role.
That's what Or, and they make bald caps.
That's true. Right, you're right. It's like, no special effects are impossible. I don't know what you're talking about, Paul.
But no, not that I care about that. But, so yes, we actually see Professor Xavier. Maybe before he even got his professorship. Maybe he's just...
he's just...
grad student.
Grad
Xavier.
Yes, teacher's assistant Xavier.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is essentially a flashback episode.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it actually places all these events, or most of the events, in the 70s.
Why would you say 70s?
So, his mother survived the war, right?
Right, so World War II.
Right.
Concentration camps.
And so that means he was born late 40s, right?
Well, I looked this up. So one of the things, she's reading the Harold and the Purple Crayon.
Okay.
That book.
Yeah.
To him. Now, this isn't necessarily a thing, but that book was written in 1955.
Oh, okay.
So
all right.
It seems like she was in the war, concentration camp.
Right, sure.
Lost her whole family.
Yep.
Then I think it's in the 50s that she has the kid, which would then mean if he's in his 30s.
Yeah, you're right. So the 80s.
So he's probably 80 or 90, 1990, something like that, maybe.
Yeah. It just gives them less reason to have their retro look.
Right, yeah. We talked about that in previous seasons. There was like, what era is this in? Because they've got, I think it's deliberately mismatched.
Yeah.
So they're like, it's any time. But you're right, when you have something like World War II, that's a pretty, you don't just move that around in time.
No.
That's in the 40s.
Yep.
Yeah, so you've got a situation where David, apparently Carrie with a C, has magnified Switch's powers. Which is at the end of the last episode. He's like, I'll magnify it with the thing. Blah, blah, blah. And so now it's David is looking into the past with Switch. He's had a hard time showing up.
Yes.
So maybe that's a limitation of Carrie's, until at the end of the episode he kind of shows up. I'll jump to that real fast. Okay. If you're going to go back in the past and try to save yourself.
Yes.
Maybe. When you show up for the first time,
sure,
and you see your mom, you don't go, "Mommy," and put her into a coma. You start with something a little different, maybe like, "Hey, I'm from the future. I know it sounds weird. I'm your son, David, and you're not crazy. Hear me out, not Mommy."
I wonder why it's her. I guess maybe because his proximity to her. Because if you're gonna talk to somebody, I feel like
talk to your
dad. Yeah.
Yeah, good point. He's the one who'd be like, "Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
I understand these things."
Like, oh, you got the thing? Me too.
Let me talk to the person who's fairly convinced, justifiably so, that she's crazy, and then go, "Mommy." So yeah, he puts her. He's the one that screwed himself over. He in essence, kind of Hodors himself.
He does.
Because by going back, he puts his mom into a coma or makes her pass out.
Yes.
His dad, Professor X, shows up, is looking after her, trying to like heal her at the time then when Shadow King goes into little baby David. So he's David is the reason why he's unprotected, and thus Shadow King jumps into him. I'm going to guess that loop can't be fixed, but obviously he's going to try. But it's kind of one of those,
Fait accompli.
Oh, very nice. And actually, we mentioned Harold and the Purple Crayon. I think the reason they bring the passage she reads from that book, is about how Harold is trying to protect this one apple tree by he creates a dragon, and the dragon frightens everyone, including Harold, and so he realizes too late his problem. So similar to this situation, he's trying to protect himself by going back, and he's such a frightening presence that he actually ends up screwing himself over.
Yeah.
He and Harold,
and his tendency to always look the opposite way of his mother. Trying to turn that baby over.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, good point. Yes, he's
back of
constantly...
the baby's head.
What? Faceless baby is one of the more the creepiest moments maybe in Legion in a way. I mean, just in terms of just like out and out like, whoa. She, being the mom, Gabrielle, seems to be able to defeat the illusion in that moment when she like summons up some kind of an anger response, or like she's like, and she turns red for a second. She's like, and then the face returns, as though like somehow she combated the Shadow King's control.
It could have been.
With
this
burst of emotion, perhaps. There's some. I mean, you argue that she's got some maybe latent powers herself, but I don't know. Anyway, there's a lot of theory crafting you could make about this episode.
Yeah, sure.
One of those theories is that it's all in his head. I mean, I'm not going to go down this road because I don't think it's true. But I could lay groundwork to say that actually, like, David was born in like the astral plane, and that he's maybe not even an actual thing. That he's just he was born in the mind of his mom. Anyway, okay, but
it would be a shame if Matt wound up in an institution where there was nobody to magically alleviate his delusions.
I need someone to come in magically to alleviate my delusions. Okay, so I'll give you what would be, I think, the most Occam's razor sensible reading of this episode. And I won't go into theory crafting mode on this just yet. So the idea would be, during the war, looks like Xavier was fighting for the British, let's say, and he came across a bunker. There was an enemy soldier, a Nazi, and in the middle of fighting, he's reading the Nazi soldier's thoughts. He's like, die, die, die. And so, this like, I'm about to die here. So he basically mentally projects I will kill myself, and the Nazi soldier does it, and we're left with Xavier lying there, realizing he just forced a man to commit suicide. And while I think we had this talk a little earlier, was that the first thought of his? Did he first discover his powers there, or was it more of he had those powers all along, but first time that he realized he used them for like a really violent purpose?
I would think that.
I think it's true because also he does read this guy's mind.
Yeah.
The guy's like, die, die, die.
And he's not like,
reading
what?
It. Yeah. Huh? How am I? Wait, this is important for me. So yeah, he's probably been able to, he knows he's been able to read minds.
You're thinking die, die, die. Right? How did you know?
Which in German means the. Are you like that band? He, I think it's the first time that he used his power in a, in a deadly way.
It could have been, or just, perhaps just the whole, experience of the war, maybe that wasn't that particular singular act, as,
So you're saying what leads him to end up being in an institution, in other words. So he gets either voluntarily or involuntarily, we're not sure, institutionalized as a result of either that particular action or the war in general.
It does seem like, that he could have decided not to. You know, because there's a point where you just sort of like,
if it's involuntary, it's not involuntary,
Yeah.
right? It's like, nah, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's
All
just
right,
like,
you're fine, sir.
you know,
There you go.
that was a great scene with the therapist when he's like reading the therapist's mind. Like, this guy, he's like, I know what you're thinking.
Yeah, the therapist is asking him, like, Heidegger, you know how men are born many men, but die one man. How do you explain that? And yeah, you just see the therapist thinking, oh, this guy. He's hopeless. Which is great. Yeah, it was great. And so he's just choosing not to talk in that moment. I'm not sure to what end. You know, what do you think? Why not humor the guy and be like, oh, here's what I think it means. Heidegger, you're born with a lot of options.
Why not talk or whatever?
Yeah.
I mean, I think because he was saying that he's damaged by the experience and doesn't want to be involved with it anymore. I mean,
okay.
You know.
So he's been institutionalized.
And you will look at the themes that he sort of expresses in terms of, at least with Cerebro, where he wants to find someone who's like himself. And even though his experience with, who becomes wife is not the exact same thing, it's still a matter of connection, right? You know, so until then, perhaps he hadn't really, you certainly don't see any substantive relationships for him, you know, so maybe it's only after he meets her that he feels connected again.
Yes, I think that's right. Because you see that moment where he's looking around the institution, like the various troubled people there, and then he kind of hits on her, I think, as someone that he can perhaps fix as well, or attempt to.
I guess he's curious, maybe.
Yeah. She's comatose in a wheelchair.
And maybe that's too... I mean, later on he talks about, in terms of ethics, the ethics of when you would read someone's mind. But,
yes.
You know, someone who's obviously in trouble, you know, might be a reason, you know, you could say, oh, it's okay for me to do it at this point, which is how he gets to know her.
Right. Kind of the Hippocratic Oath of, like, do no harm kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, obviously, very important here, there's a ton of parallels between... Professor X and Gabrielle's meetings, and Sid and David from season 1. Right, they're meeting in a mental institution. There's a cherry pie, I believe, was a thing back from Sid having cherry pie. There's the song, she's like a rainbow. That was from season 1, relating to Sid and Dave. I believe Sid is. In the first season, draws a sketch of David, and there's Professor X is drawing a sketch. Anyway, so they're obviously making a ton of parallels between these two folks, and David notices that as he's watching through his omniscient window. He meets Gabrielle. He decides, he asks about her. They're like, oh yeah, she was in a concentration camp. She has no family. He tries to read her mind. He sees all this pain inside there. Eventually, he does another little mind wipe thing. Not mind wipe, but he doesn't do that. He reaches in, and there's this interesting moment where he goes into like a trance because he suddenly blinks and she's not in the chair anymore. I'm going to guess that it was the act of maybe accessing her memories or healing what was damaged, somehow temporarily puts him out of commission or something. I don't know what your thought is on that, why he lost track of time.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's not that she was an ultra powerful villain who then froze him in place. And then, okay.
I mean, it's possible that moment may appear later. I'd be surprised if it did.
I think so.
But
I think it's just.
I think he just got lost in what he was doing, and then
he woke up and she's like,
oh,
she's walking, and then she talks for the first time. They have a conversation. She does that thing where she's like, oh, she talks about how she thought a tomato was an apple and she ate it. She's like, did you see that when you were reading my mind?
I guess one thing we don't know is how long she's been in that situation. So if she was really young when it happened and now she's an older person, then it would make sense for her to have this experience with the tomato still on her mind.
Yeah. It's like most people would know a tomato unless you're pretty damn young at the time. But yeah,
and if it's occurring in the 50s, if in the mid 40s, 10 years earlier.
Yeah.
So she was fairly young.
She was fairly young, perhaps. But point being, she uses that little story as this little, suddenly switches gears with like, by the way, I know you were reading my mind. And it's not accusatory, but it's kind of an interesting little like, it was like a little, like, oh, you know that? How did you, what? Okay, ha 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 ha. And so he basically says, yes, I can read minds, I'm a telepath, but they've set rules for privacy.
Yeah.
David, rules. So they are together. There's another shot. I've been noting how each episode has some kind of a dance in it, and they have them dancing in the institution. They just it's a. It's not like a zippy disco-y thing.
It's not like that.
Meanwhile, actually, that music is coming through from
Disco
David's future, and she's hearing it.
She is.
Professor X or at least pretends not to hear it at some point. She's like, "Do you hear that?" He's like, "But." I'm like, "You sure you don't hear it?" I hear it.
And I'm not even psychic.
So eventually, they have a sexual encounter.
Yes.
In the institute.
Yes.
She has this dream. She's like, I had a dream that we owned the stars, which made me think back to the first season again with the David saying the stars talked to him or something. Like, what did the stars say? I don't know if there's any reference.
And when he was abducted.
Yeah. And so she's like, yeah, but that's here we are, second institution, and Professor's like, no, I can solve that problem. If you want to not be here, we can not be here.
Yep.
And so this is where you could say it's all in his mind, where he just creates another a reality where they're out when they're actually still in. But
no, you couldn't say it because you aren't deluded.
Okay.
Only he.
It's all in Professor X's mind. Okay. So instead, the more Occam's razor version of this is that he basically just goes click and makes everyone complicit in his escape. They're like, yay, they're married or something, and and then everybody. Then you see them no longer in gowns. They were in hospital gowns for a long time, and then they're like dressed up all nice and fancy, and they leave. And the guy, the guy who was like, this guy's so lame. Opening the door,
yep.
Bye,
see ya.
Bye. Yeah. I don't think they just let people out when they're like, I'm fine now. Oh, okay.
Well, no, right. They don't typically.
Unless you're like, I'm fine now. Yes. So seems to be the rules can bend.
Yes, ethically.
I will force you to let me go.
Less bad than saying kill yourselves.
Correct. Correct.
That would have the same effect where they could just walk out, but it wouldn't be to applause. But
yeah. No, good point. So they go to this old cool but yet creepy mansion where apparently they're the only ones in it. They live in a big old place by themselves. She's very blunt about it. She says, I'm not well. He's like, hey, I'm not either. Which is like he's saying, oh, I'm a mutant. And she's like, yeah, I'm crazy. And so I think the major takeaway from the two of them, because she says like, he says, I hope he's not like me. I hope I don't pass this on to him.
Right.
She's like, well, better you than me. And he's like, no, I'd much rather him be like you. She's like, well, he'll be himself. And I think the takeaway is David has mutant powers and these
he's like
emotional
both
problems.
Of them.
Yeah.
Two great tastes that taste great together.
So they have the kid, and she's having some, still some troubles. She's still hearing future David trying to come through.
Yep.
At one point, David's trying to get back into see himself as an infant, and then he keeps getting thrown back into the earlier courting days back in the institution. He's like, why are we back here? Yep. And Switch, you're saying like, oh, these two are connected. Which I'm not exactly sure what that necessarily means, except to say this informs that. But unless it's all in his head, and so they're actually in the institution the whole time, and they're not. Okay, all right. Anyway, all right.
Only
Occam's razor.
If only I was in his head, at least a version that could exist in his head, then I wouldn't have to keep hearing this crazy theory.
Okay.
Be like, so, here's when you know that it's really gone off the rails. I go, yes,
yes, man.
It is in his head.
All right, here's me reading way too much into something, but
Furious.
It's interesting to me. Of the songs they use the Daniel Johnston song, the True Love song, which was interesting on its own face. Oh, sure, hey. True love will save you in the end. But Daniel Johnston himself, if you've seen the documentary The Devil and Daniel Johnston, he's a guy that was institutionalized. At one point, he was being medicated for psychotic breaks, essentially. Stopped taking his medicine because he wanted to be a better artist, and then between gigs, his dad would fly him in this little private plane, essentially, between gigs. While they're up in the air going from a gig, he has a psychotic break, thinks that he's Casper, the friendly ghost, the Shadow King, and basically turns the engine off of the plane, takes the keys, whips him out of the plane, and the dad is forced to make a crash landing. The plane's destroyed. They end up with just minor injuries somehow, but it's after that.
It's all in his mind.
It was all in his mind. That's why. The dad is forced to institutionalize his son in that moment, and so there's a father-son thing. There's this mental health element to it, and this denial, perhaps.
The cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue. Oh, sorry.
That's in the next episode. You spoilered. Okay. So anyway, I just thought that was an interesting choice to make of that particular artist. Seems somewhat relevant, and plus he has Omega level mutant powers.
Sure.
So Daniel Johnston. We got the kid. They're in the house. Everything seems okay-ish, and then you've got the early version of Cerebro, and we see Professor X is reaching out to find other mutants. He still hasn't found another one like himself.
No.
There's a question. She asks him, "Hey, there is like you said." He's like, "Probably, maybe, but I don't know." So boom, Shadow King finds him. Shadow King's actually reaching out to him, or not necessarily to him, but reaching out similarly. And so they kind of, I get the implication that maybe Shadow King found him at the same time he was finding Shadow King. That maybe it's hard to tell, but anyway.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So he realizes he's in Morocco, and he immediately packs up his bags. He's like, "I gotta go." She's like, "Please don't go." He's like, "I'm going, but I'll be back." Ta-da, you! And so he takes off, heads off from Morocco, and we get the opinion he's gone for a little while.
Sure, yeah.
Weeks, probably. Yeah. Meanwhile, of course, David's trying to come through. He's still trying to protect his little kid version of himself.
Yes.
She's seeing him, little hints of this future David is making her feel crazy. And she's writing these letters, but then when you get a close-up of the paper, it's like she's just scribbling on paper.
Ooh.
I was like, oh, that's not good.
No.
That's not good.
Bad.
That's... one thing also is we see that there's from season 1 the little doll that David has as a kid that looks like Hitler.
Yes, yes.
And it's like it's always been synonymous with the Shadow King. It's like, and there's even that big version of it as the Shadow King.
Yeah.
She is the one who had this doll.
Yes.
And in fact, in her comatose state, they had the doll's in a box, and they've cut a hole in the box so that her hand can always be touching the doll.
Yeah.
And then when I get the feeling that the doll is, it's an actual doll, but it's also a metaphor, I think, for her mental illness.
Oh, I get her.
And so
that she passes it on to her son.
She passes it on to her son.
That makes sense.
So, all right, you believe in one of my theories?
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah,
I'm 1 for 28.
Yeah, it's not predicated on it being all in his head.
Okay, it's all in his head. Okay, there's a thing with the TV where David's like, "Oh no, the Shadow King's right there behind you." The guy on the TV almost seems like an earlier version of like Switch's dad, maybe, because he's on the TV talking.
That's an insight, yeah.
And it seems like the Shadow King is thwarted in that moment because he inevitably shows up at the end of the episode. But Professor X comes back. He's returning home, and right at that moment that he's returning, Gabrielle wakes up. There's no door. She's freaking out. She finally manages to get to David, but in that moment, that's where she has the faceless kid problem. And then followed by, Mommy! And she passes out. Professor X shows up, but he's so preoccupied with the comatose wife that he doesn't see. No, there's the big glasses on the wall. Like you see the eyes have shown up, the eyes from season 1. And Shadow King infects little baby David. And Professor X shows up in time to bamf away futuristic David.
Oh, yes, that's true.
Which is like, no. And so he's thrown out of the past, essentially.
Right.
And Switch has been thrown out. She loses another tooth. She's exhausted. She has to rest. David doesn't want her to rest. I think the idea is that Switch is going to become less and less human over time. I think she's going to the more she has to push her powers. I don't know where that's going, but probably not somewhere good. But I'm a little confused as to why David he seems so intent. Like, we got to go back now. Yeah. We got to get back. Hurry up. But she's like, I got to rest. Like, it's time travel. You could just let her rest and then let's try again. That's what time travel is. Like, hey, you get ready to eat some soup, take a nap. We'll go right back to where we were. I mean, I don't see why time is urgent at this point.
I mean, he's an urgent character.
Yeah. He just wants to solve the problem because whatever. Yeah, it's still affecting me. I'd rather it not affect me.
He's not that good at keeping subtleties in his mind anyway, so.
Yeah. So yes, he's been thwarted in the moment. And the thing he wanted to avoid, which was Shadow King taking over his body,
looks like
it's happened anyway.
Kind of caused it in a way.
Right, and he caused it. Good point. So are we going to see like versions of this where he keeps going back, trying a different tactic, and then it's still happening for a different reason?
Yeah,
maybe.
I don't know.
It's like the inevitable fait accompli, as you mentioned. And that last shot of the Shadow King's like, my beautiful boy, because that's basically the first line we see from this episode where Gabrielle's going, my beautiful boy. So there's this parallel there where. So yeah, that's an interesting point. So I'd been under the impression until fairly recently that the Shadow King had he'd been defeated by Professor X in Morocco, and then had sought out David, the infant son, essentially out of revenge. I'm kind of thinking now it's just more of like because he was defeated and his body was destroyed, he's just looking for a powerful vessel to inhabit. And he, hey, the guy who just killed me, I wonder if he has any relatives. Right. Oh, he does. I'll bet that guy's powerful. And as opposed to, I want to be horrible to this guy's family, it's like, oh, I'm going to just exploit the crap out of it because it's a powerful mutant.
Right. Well, I guess, yeah.
Like if Wolverine had been around, maybe he just jumps into Wolverine.
Right,
instead,
yeah, to clarify, though, it's not that his body's destroyed, right? Because later on, they're looking for his body. True. He's been forced from his body.
From his body.
Right, because it's an astral projection fight, so they will leave their bodies, and so he went back.
And Wolverine probably wouldn't be a good host anyway, because it's not a mind thing. Wolverine's more physical and less brain. I was thinking like a powerful mutant, but I think it's not just a powerful mutant. It's a powerful mutant in the astral.
It could be. It could be that. We don't really know. I don't think we know about any other mutant that he's killed. We just know that he's mentioned that he's taken the powers of other mutants.
Yeah. That's an interesting parallel, and I feel like it's more of a, I'm going to be your dad and exploit you. I mean, he's still evil as hell, and the stuff he's done is horrible.
Yes,
I just feel like it's less revenge and more just, I'm a manipulative dick, perhaps, but I don't know.
I mean, it might be, right now he's probably not very happy in his current state. He certainly wants to, accomplish taking over David or whatever, so he can, do the things that he now, in the present time, he's probably as happy as he can be, even though he's pursuing David still. He's totally corporeal, and he's, pursuing David.
It occurred to me that maybe Sid, it's the trope of superhero movies. When a superhero has a power, we see him use their power at some point.
Yes.
We haven't seen Sid use her power in a long time.
It's been a very long time.
So I feel like before the end of the season, which is now only 5 episodes away.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Ooh, this year you're getting it in.
She's gonna use that power. And so I feel like they're gonna store this up and she's gonna use it. Now, there's 2 ways I could see it go down. One, would be a mirror of season 1 when David kissed her and kind of accidentally took, they switched bodies.
Right.
And that kind of initiated, the events to come. Could be that it ends a similar way where she kind of initiates something, switches bodies, and then basically either destroys or contains David's body while she's in it. So that when they switch back, right. David is contained or dead. That's one way to do it. The other thing is, maybe now that you've introduced Switch and you've introduced Carrie with a C, who now knows how to boost the power, maybe that combination of things is how future Sid is talking to David in that season 2. So that maybe there's a, Switch realizes, oh yeah, I'm kind of helping the wrong guy here, perhaps, and I'm going to help the other side. I don't know. Perhaps.
Did you mention your other thing about Switch and her father?
Oh yeah, I thought maybe we're trying to figure out the motivation. Switch, right now, it just feels like Switch is like, I was bored, nothing else to do. There was a sign that looked like it was to me, so I'm here. But she seems awfully committed for someone who's just bored and looking for something to do. So maybe her dad, because she knows her dad works with robots, and maybe her dad is the admiral with the basket head, Admiral Dukiyama, I think. He worked with the robotic mustache folks, the Vermilion. So perhaps he works for D3 or is D3, and she's rebelling against what she sees as like, corporate robot dad.
Yeah.
So that could be a thing. Or she loses an arm. I think that's going to be coming up by the end of the season. I think we'll see maybe an arm loss moment.
Unfortunate if, personally I prefer that we not see the arm moment, although, I guess they wanted to make it think like it's as hopeless as it can be before they write it, which I kind of feel like they...
Do you think they're going to write it, or do you think they're going to go apocalyptic?
Yeah, it'd be hard for me to, I'd really be questioning what the point of it was if that was the case.
Yeah, I'm kind of like Counterpart, right, where we were like, they finished it, and they're like, hey! And then they're like, nope, nope, they're going to kill everyone. There was a giant plague. So, yeah, I feel like they're going to go into, they'll be in another reality, and the question will be, will this one result in an apocalypse? And it'll be an open question.
Wow.
Is my guess.
Okay.
Like, maybe we can save ourselves over time.
Wow.
Question mark.
Okay. It's just that David's life won't be at stake is the only difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Perhaps. I don't know. Anyway.
Because it's supposed to conclude. We know this is the final season. So.
It is final season. I do think, yeah. I thought of a scenario where maybe David resolves this problem with the Shadow King, but then still he realizes, oh yeah, I still got that problem from my mom, and I have my own problems, and that it's going to lead me to be kind of the same threat that I would have been even, with or without the Shadow King. I'd still be a threat to the world. In other words, perhaps, which is a dark. Thing.
Yeah, that's pretty dark.
That's pretty.
Yeah, that's interesting. That you think that's how it's going to end? Okay.
Maybe. Yeah.
I feel like that. They do. It's a fairly well-established trope in the show already. That it can be bad. Here's the solution anyway.
Here's something I noted. This whole time when they keep going back, they're trying to go back in time. We keep hearing this Watt song, Captain Sensible. What you want? Hey, and so it's catchy. It's got the little beat going. But point being, I'm pretty sure I remember this correctly. Episode 1 of this season, when Switch is listening to the rules of time travel, one of those rules is don't associate time travel with music, because you don't want to make it nostalgic or associate any feelings toward a particular time frame. You want to keep it neutral. So she was, the rules are being broken already. Let's put it that way. So,
Matt's such a stickler for rules.
I'm a stickler for, just like Professor X, until there's like, all right, I need to leave now. So anyway, there you go. That's a general covering of episode 3. Yes. Do you guys have theories out there, or you can tell us we're completely wrong?
Yes.
And that it is in fact all in his head.
You can tell me I'm completely wrong. That's it's all in his head. Perhaps it's in all of your heads.
That's how good the show is. Yeah, put them down in the comments. We'll be happy to chat back at you. So thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.